If you deliver customer value and you know how to price it, everything else will take care of itself.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
Man, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the undeniable relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and today our guest is Mark Boundy. Here are 3 things you absolutely want to know about Mark before we start. He is part of the C-Suite network where he advises CXOs about business. Can't wait to hear what that really means. He's been a consultant for Miller Heiman, a sales performance company, for 8 years. I took Miller Heiman training 30 years ago. I don't remember any of it, so maybe he'll teach us something. And third, he went to U of Michigan. So I'll speak slowly and hopefully he'll understand me the entire time. Actually, to be fair, Mark, he's also writing a book called The Value Multiplier, which should be out soon, and I cannot wait to hear about it. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm really excited to be here.
My apologies for the Michigan joke. I just can't help myself.
It's a Michigan, Ohio State thing. It's to be expected.
It is. So how did you get into pricing?
I have a deep history of being in product management, product marketing, and then sales. So having managed a P&L statement at a company that was maniacal about customer perceived value and having, as I said, as having P&L responsibility, you suddenly develop a lot more sensitivity towards price and profitable pricing than, unfortunately, than many sales organizations today have.
Quick comment. I teach people all the time that pricing is about not only capturing value, but communicating value and creating value. That sounds to me like product management, product marketing, and sales.
Yeah.
Boy, you grew up in the right space.
Yeah, exactly. And communicating value is something that I can get kind of wound up on. Value only exists in the customer's mind. And if you are messaging value or proposing value in your value proposition, you don't know if it landed and turned into value between the customer's ears. So I really want to make sure that we're using precision. I don't like unidirectional words like messaging. If we're talking about communication, that's got to be bidirectional, where you said something that might have resulted in value, but you've got to confirm whether value happened in the customer's brain, and if so, how much value happened in the customer brain. And you can't do either of those 2 things without two-way communication.
I couldn't agree more. All value is perceived value. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. I tell people that when I use the term customer perceived value, I'm being purposefully redundant because there is no other kind of value.
Yes, and that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. The other question that came to mind really quickly is, I've never heard of a company that is maniacal about perceived value. What company was that? And give us some more detail, please.
This company was named W.L. Gore and Associates. If anybody has ever worn a Gore-Tex garment,
Yep.
You are familiar with Gore's products. But it was started as an industrial company that made wire and cable. That same Gore-Tex makes some of the world's best cable insulation. Gore makes artificial arteries and veins and implantable medical devices because that same Gore-Tex is chemically inert and doesn't interact with the immune system. And also there's industrial filtration and other kinds of products that are used. So it's a big company that does a lot of business to business. And in every one of those businesses, when I was there, you could not go a day without hearing somebody ask the question, what's the value? And that was shorthand in that culture for what will the customer do if they don't buy from us? What do they like better about us? What are the financial impacts of what they like better about us? And what kind of price premium over the second best option can we command and still make the customer thrilled that they did business with us?
Oh my God, you just grew up in the right space to really get pricing. Nice.
It was a huge gift. And having gone from there to other cultures and seeing how rare and special that culture was, I had the chance to preach value to other folks or just lead my little segment of the customer without of the company without necessarily teaching those around me. But now I've got to back up and say, I've been there, I've done that, I've created value for customers, and now it's time for me to share what I've learned. And so I'm writing the book, as you said in your intro, the Value Multiplier, how adding value to your customers multiplies value back to yourself. And it takes the position that everything a company does should be about value. In fact, the purpose of a company is to generate more value for a customer than it costs to deliver. In corporate America, we get ourselves twisted around the axle trying to look for other substitutes for that core truth of business. And we look at shareholder value and customer satisfaction scores and being customer-centric, when really at the core of all of those, if you deliver customer value and you know how to price it, everything else will take care of itself.
Okay, Mark, I got to tell you, I'm a little bit frustrated here.
Okay.
Because normally by now with my guests, I found something to disagree with. And so far you have just been spot on. This is just incredible. I love the message that you deliver.
In the sales world, we've noticed something, the CSO Insights, which is the big research house. It's kind of like the Gartner research of sales research. For the last several years, they've said that the number of buyers, people involved in the buying process, has grown steadily over the last decade. It was 4 to 6, now it's 6 to 8, up to 11 or 12 in many cases. They've counted that trend, but they haven't said why. And I think it's because companies are getting more and more siloed and specialized. Where it used to be HR, now it's HR is divided into talent and recruiting and benefits and certain kinds of benefits and absence management and performance management. And so if your solution used to be sold to 1 or 2 of those people, now it's 3 or 4 of those people. And so we really struggle with selling, with having a customer understand value, especially if only one of those people has the budget to buy what you have. We tend to talk narrowly to the kind of value that that person is interested in rather than the whole value that our offer might have. So customers are really siloed and splintered, and it's really hard for them to get a fair view of the broad value of what we sell in my business to business world. And conversely, the customer interface has also been splintered. We've gone from sales to sales, outside sales, hunters, farmers, technical sales support, demo specialists, proposal specialists, implementation specialists, delivery, customer satisfaction, technical support. And every single one of those roles has a view, has a unique vantage point into the customer that the person with the title of salesperson will never have, relationships that they can never hope to replicate, and failing to give everybody who is in customer contact the ability to have not just deliver a great customer experience, but to ask questions about what is customer value. When somebody in tech support says, I see that's a problem. How often do you have that problem? How widely does it spread? How many dollars a year is that problem costing you? And then taking that little insight back to the hive so that marketers can start marketing it, product developers can start developing product innovation and solutions around that problem. The fact that we've splintered the outgoing customer interface has limited our ability as companies from getting a full value picture. So customers are splintered, and it keeps them from buying more broadly and insightfully. Sellers are splintered, and it keeps us from selling and gathering all the information. And so my book is about stopping the madness.
I think those are 2 really big points. Mark, I agree with you. But I think even if we simplified the world, let's say that there was one seller and one buyer. I still see that salespeople don't sell value. We're out pitching products and talking about features and doing demos, and we're not focused on value. Now, am I wrong about that?
You are not wrong at all. I'm engaging with several clients as we speak on taking their world-class sales and helping them understand value. And the temptation is, and it's not because sellers are lazy, it's because sellers are human beings, and human beings find the simplest way to get on with whatever it is you're doing. And if you sell until the customer says yes, you've done your job. But selling value means that you've had a little bit more conversation about value along the way. So when it's time for the customer to buy, they have a much better reason, and you've got a much better reason to sell. And teaching the sales force, all of your sellers, the difference between selling to make a sale and selling to make a sale at the right price takes half a dozen or a dozen little tweaks through the entire sales process that don't really take all that much more time or effort. They're a change in behavior. But you're absolutely right, Mark.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's actually easier to sell value. That's not true. It's easier to memorize a script and spew it out. But if we're trying to actually make the sale, it's easier and more effective to sell value.
Absolutely. I am highly trained in how to get sales managers to coach sales process. I can help a salesperson if they'll use the sales process we've designed. I'm really good at diagnosing what's going wrong with the sale and why it's stuck and what we should do about it. But if you are able as a sales coach to simply ask, what is the customer's value? What does the customer see as value? And if that salesperson can answer that question, I know I don't need to coach anything. They did the whole thing right. I don't have to find what they've done wrong. And if they don't know, they could probably figure out what they need to do to go out and get that information.
Yeah. Let me ask a tricky question. What is value? When you define it, what do you mean when you say the word value?
I'll give you the definition after I wander a little bit.
Okay.
Customers don't buy our products or services. They buy outcomes.
Yep.
What they will pay for those outcomes depends on the desirability of those outcomes. So value is the desirability of the outcomes that a customer will get from implementing, buying, installing our product or service. It is the monetarily measurable, usually, desirability of the outcome.
By the way, I don't disagree with that. Let me give you my definition of value and let's chat about it, see what makes sense.
Yeah.
I think of value, first off, my really simple definition of value. Value is what your buyer is willing to pay. Period. Now, the next question becomes, how do you figure out what they're willing to pay and where does that value come from? And I find those fascinating conversations.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that? And by the way, the one more thing, and as soon as you say to me we're in a B2B world, I will tell you value has a dollar on it every time.
Yeah. Almost all. Yes. It should have there are some parts of value that are very difficult to dollarize, but you could force a prospect to dollarize some of them.
That's, by the way, why I love B2B.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time pricing a pizza. I love pizza, right? I'd probably pay $100 for pizza, but
yeah, the right pizza at the right time, sure.
Right. But it's hard for me to say, yeah, this is how many dollars that makes me.
Yeah. And when people ask, say, I don't buy some of the stuff you say, well, I just drove past two gas stations across the street from each other, and the price of unleaded regular gasoline across the street was 40 cents a gallon different. Tell me why one of them gets any business at all.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if price were the only thing that mattered, only one seller would have all the business.
Yeah, these are absolutely true statements. Yeah. Absolutely true statements.
So I like that value is what a customer is willing to pay. I think that is correct. From a functional standpoint, I want to help people understand what makes them willing to pay. So in my B2B world, it's tell me about the outcomes your solution delivers and what those are worth to you. And you can
Absolutely.
And you could even do that in a consumer side, right? Because those two gas stations, one of them has a better convenience store inside and has cleaner bathrooms. One of them is a left-hand turn while you're driving home from work, and the other one is right-hand turn.
Yep.
I'm always too late to buy gas on the way into work. I only have enough time to buy gas on the way home. So I'm going to choose the one that's the right turn, not the left turn.
Yep.
All of those things might go into a consumer price difference.
Oh, absolutely. Now we're talking about differentiation and the value of the differentiation between our offering and the closest competitor's offering.
I completely agree. I spent time at Michigan at that school up north.
Oh, really?
Yes. I was the research assistant for one of really prominent researcher in the area of consumer choice and consumer behavior. So I spent quite a bit of time looking at deep, nerdy articles on how people make decisions. And the reality is people, if they're faced with a lot of choices, they quickly narrow it down to two using some really dumb ways of just knocking things out. Until they get to the final two, then they seriously consider the final two. And we decide based on differences. When it's two cars, we don't say both of them have 4 tires, both of them have 2 bumpers, both of them have a steering wheel. We will say, I like the aluminum wheels better than on this one better than that one. I like the leather upholstery on this one better than the other one. I like the location of the cup holders on this one better than the other one. We don't spend time comparing all the sames.
Yep.
So we look at the differences, and then we decide if we like those differences and what outcomes those differences will get for us. And sometimes we do that by some sort of a fuzzy gut feel, but we make our decisions based on the differences between the two options.
Yeah, I agree completely. And as soon as we go to the B2B world, I would expect as a company, as a sales organization, we should be able to put a dollar value on that difference.
Should be. And this is one of those awful areas where the difference between should and does hits us far too often.
Well, let me ask you a question. You've been in the sales training. I'm assuming that you're at least familiar with Miller Heiman sales training, and you've been in the sales training space.
Yep.
Wow. Why don't sales trainers train about value, or do they, and everybody ignores it?
They train about value, but they train to 90% of price of what would be what I consider priceable value. We talk about differences. We talk about what people like about differences. We talk about outcomes, the different outcomes of those differences, and then we stop. We don't talk about the dollar value of those outcomes, the different outcomes. And since we both go to football schools, imagine you're a defender. You have gotten up underneath you put your shoulder blade underneath the sternum of the guy with the ball carrier, and you've wrapped around and you have lifted up and their feet are off the ground. And you are in that millisecond of deciding, do I finish this tackle or do I just wait for the ref to blow the whistle? Mm-hmm. And getting somebody to the point where they're going to make a buying decision, the ref is going to blow the whistle and the down stopped. Or you can finish the tackle, you can put some grass stains on the numbers on the back of the guy's jersey and make him grunt with pain. And right, that's selling to value, and that's understanding how much they will pay, right?
We have to put a positive spin on this for just a second, Mark.
Yeah, maybe we'll go a different way, but it's a matter. Go ahead, let's start again.
No, you're beautiful. I love the. We're not cutting that. That was amazing.
All right,
but
you know,
I think of often is, let's say I have a product, and let's say my salesperson actually knows the product exceptionally well. They know what it does, and they've got experience with other customers using it. They're really knowledgeable about that product. Then we have a buyer. That buyer is not like any customer we've ever had before. that buyer doesn't understand our product as well as our salesperson understands our product, but the salesperson doesn't understand the buyer's situation
Oh my gosh.
as well as the buyer understands the buyer's situation. And if the two of them were willing to have a conversation, sometimes this is called a value conversation, together, they could figure out, well, how much is this thing actually worth? The buyer should love this because now the salesperson's helping them understand, is this a good decision? Is it not a good decision? How are you going to justify it to your management? This is just us exploring value together.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Mark. Think of a Venn diagram with two circles that are partially overlapping. And on one side, it's the customer's desired outcomes, all the things and their aspirations, things they want to accomplish in their business and personal life. And on the right-hand circle is the selling company's differentiated capabilities, all the things that I can do. And it's the seller's job to find out what all those capabilities are. And it's the seller's job, and the customer should be very willing to do that, because it's also the seller's job to figure out how many of those customer problems they can solve, how many of those value gaps their solution can deliver. So it's a combination of business acumen. The seller has to have a combination of business acumen and conversational capability to understand the buyer's business, their entire business, and to get beyond the silo that is the one that owns the budget for this particular purchase to all of the business needs.
Yep.
And then be the expert in the solution so that they can leverage all of their company's capabilities into that customer's situation so that that area of overlap is the greatest possible.
I don't have as much experience as you do in sales, but I loved the phrase business acumen. And I would rather have salespeople that have business acumen for my buyers and then have a technical person help them with the technical side.
That is one of the things that I do outside of my Miller Heiman work is having gone through that top-level business school and then having decades of experience in business as a general management, as a leader. I was lucky enough to work for GE Capital, where I called on CFOs and got to talk about big business issues all day long. I developed a skill set that I didn't realize I had of coming up to speed on a stranger's business really quickly. And some of the skills that I developed, I found that the other consultants around me weren't as good at. And so I started collecting what's different about my approach to business. And so I've developed a quick business acumen I started it as sellers, but somebody said, Mark, everybody who touches a customer, everybody in your business needs this kind of business acumen, not just your salespeople. But you need to, as a business to business, especially seller, you need to really be the one responsible for helping your customer think outside of their own silo and understand all of their business needs.
I think that was perfect. Mark, unfortunately, we are running out of time. But before we wrap up, can I ask, here's the big question.
Okay.
What's one big piece of pricing advice that you could give our listeners that you think would have a big impact on their business?
It's that magic question. What does this mean to you? And how much is this costing you every year? Or what financial difference could this make to you if you were to solve this problem? And then shut up, because they have and shut up and listen.
And they'll give you, essentially, they're going to tell you, here's where your value comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been the highest price, whatever I was selling. Wire and cable, I was the highest priced cable. When I was at GE Capital, I sold money. I was the highest priced money. So you can't tell me that there's a commodity that can't be premium priced.
Right.
But it was always about what problem are we solving and how can we structure this so that it solves your problem better than any other money out there.
And I have to say, as a pricing person, I would so much rather be on the side of value and high price than I would on low price and cutting costs every day of the week.
Yeah. Being in the company that has to cut their way to profitability is no fun. kind of a sucky culture to be in. And, it happens. If you were in the oil field services business or capital equipment into oil and 2016, 2017, when the price of oil was tanking, those companies had to cut their way to survival.
Yep.
And so you can cut your way to survival, you can cut your way to profitability, but you can't shrink your way to growth.
Absolutely. What a great line to leave this on. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Reach out to me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at Boundy Consulting. That's all one word. Boundy is almost like the paper towels, B-O-U-N-D-Y consulting.com.
Okay, you're going to need a metaphor. We pick you up or something like that.
The quicker picker-upper.
Quicker picker-upper, yes. Yes, that's what that one was. All right.
I never heard that one, at least not since
yesterday.
Since middle school.
Oh, okay. Okay. Episode 15 is in the can. Mark was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. What an opportunity.
Oh, this was fun. I learned a ton. I hope our listeners did too. And to our listeners, if you got value out of this podcast, please help us out. Please leave us a review, tell a friend. Every little bit helps, and we are hugely appreciative if you help out. Please send any compliments, suggestions, or questions directly to me, Mark at impactpricing.com. And definitely don't forget to listen to next week and another episode of Impact Pricing.